Hello everyone, welcome to DIADEMY IAS. In this class, we are going to discuss about Middle English literature. We already discussed the Old English literature and the important points regarding with the Old English literature, what was the period and what was the impact in English literary works and all. And we discussed about some anonymous literary works like Beowulf and other epics, elegy and all. And we already said that Beowulf was an epic. We know that what is epic? We said epic is a long narrative work which explaining about adventure. Okay, that we already discussed. And we know that after the Old English period, we have the next stage of English literary period. That period is known as Middle English literature. That is called as Middle English literature. And this period is always known as Anglo-Norman period. It's an important point. Okay, this period is always known as Anglo-Norman period. Why Middle English or Medieval English period is named as Anglo-Norman period? We can undoubtedly say that the arrival of Norman was the period of Middle English literature. Actually, after the decline of Anglo Saxons in England, there was a new invasion was happened. That was the invasion of Anglo-Norman. So that period is named as Middle English literature. Okay. So next we can discuss about the role of Anglo-Norman community. What was the role of Anglo-Norman and what was the impact of this community in England and what happened in the literature and literary works? That's we are going to discuss this class. Okay. So here let's discuss about Edward. Edward was the last king of Anglo-Saxon. Edward was the last king of Anglo-Saxon. We already said that, we explained about the Anglo-Saxon community. Okay, Anglo-Saxons were a group of people. Actually, they are tribals like people, and the joining of three important community: Angles, Saxon, and Jutes. Okay, so these are the three group of people, and normally we named as in a single term Anglo-Saxon. And actually they were visited this or arrived in Britain, and gradually they conquered the entire area in Britain. Okay, that is Britain. Okay, so the name of that time is Britain. Then gradually it changed into Britain. Okay, and Edward King, they ruled in Britain. They ruled in the region, the England region, and they had their own life systems, customs, rituals, then their own language, some sort of literary works are there. So during that time, Anglo-Saxons ruled in their own way and their own religious beliefs. That means we already discussed about pagan type of religious system before Christianity. Okay, so all these are the different types of pattern which followed by the Anglo-Saxons. But when Normans arrived in Britain, Anglo-Saxons domination They lost their domination, and Anglo Saxon last king was Edward. Okay, then in this time, Norman language was introduced. That means when Normans arrived in England, actually a new language introduced in England, that is Norman language. That is Norman language. Okay. It means that by the impact of Norman invasion in England, the priority or the importance of English actually lost, and a new language introduced in England, that is Norman language. That's an important point. The next we have to discuss about actually during that time there was another name we have to keep in our mind, that King Harold II. King Harold. Okay. King Harold actually was the last king. So that means a little time only. That means not a long time, a short time period. King Harold was there in England, who represents the Anglo Saxons. Okay, Anglo Saxon. Anglo Saxon. But that time, the powerful Normans reached in England, and they influenced this Harold. Okay, they influenced this Harold. Gradually, there was a clash happened there. That was there was a war. There was a battle in the history that is called as Hastings. Okay, that is called as the Battle of Hastings. Battle of Hastings. It's an important point. Okay, through this battle, gradually Normans dominated in Britain, or they dominated the region in England. That was a story behind the invasion of Normans in England. Okay. So next we can discuss about what's the impact of Normans in England. Here, actually, the Normans invasion in England is in 11th century. We can classify it as a 11th century. It's a period of 11th century in England. And through this invasion, what actually happened in England? What was the impact of Norman invasion in England? So here, we know that before 11th century, actually at the same time, we already discussed that Chaucer was the center of English history. That means we can classify Geoffrey Chaucer in 3 divisions. That means before Chaucer, during Chaucer, before Chaucer, during Chaucer, and after Chaucer. Okay, before Chaucer, during Chaucer, after Chaucer. What is the meaning of these 3 divisions? It means that when we refer the history of English literature, we can easily understand the old and middle part of the English literature can easily explain in a short way. That means first one is before Chaucer, during Chaucer, after Chaucer. Okay, so we can easily understand that before Chaucer, we can call it as an Anglo Saxon. Okay, we can easily understand. Anglo Saxon. Here also the term Anglo. And the second one is after Chaucer or during Chaucer time, we can name it as a Anglo-Norman. So this is the difference. Okay. So what is the importance of Chaucer in English literature? That means the history of English literature. We can say that in literary history, the literature classified in as per the measurement of the history, we can classify the English literature history in 3 different stages: before Geoffrey Chaucer, during Geoffrey Chaucer, after Geoffrey Chaucer. In short, it means that before Geoffrey Chaucer, Anglo-Saxon, and during or after Geoffrey Chaucer, it means that Anglo-Norman period. So that's an important point when we consider the Anglo-Norman influence. Then next we can discuss about what do we mean when we refer to the Middle English period. What was the impact of Middle English period? That we will discuss in this slide. Okay, so here what are the impact of Middle English period? So before that we can classify it in 2. That means Middle English, Old English period, and here Middle English period. What are the difference between Old English period and the Middle English period? So we can easily understand the impact of Middle English period. So here let's discuss. We know that in the Old English period we have discussed the different types of influence. That means Celtic influence there, Celtic influence, so that's an important point here, and the role of Anglo-Saxon. It means that the 3 community, Angles, then Saxon and Jutes. Okay, so the Old English period. And next one is English language, especially vernacular type language, was the main important point. We have to remember that during the Old English period we had vernacular English language. Okay, then these are the different points we studied in the Old English period, and we have a lot of literary works in the Old English period, but all are unknown literary works. But at the same time, the Saxon English, there was an influence of Anglo-Saxon English, which also useful for the common people. That means the common people use this English language. That means we know that the role of Geoffrey Chaucer and all also can find in this period, and the normal people normally follow the English language, common English language in this time. And when we come to the Middle English period, the entire structure is changed. That's the important point. The entire structure is changed because we know that normally the Middle English period, the Normans, we know that Normans come from, actually the Normans came from France. Okay. Actually they are from France. Okay. And at the same time, normally the language French introduced in England. So before that, the impact of Anglo Saxons and Anglo Saxon administration, English was the language normally used in that time, and after influence of Normans, a new language highly spread all over the England region, Britain region, region of England, all over the region, a new language introduced, that is French language, because we know that Normans are the group of people from France. Normally they used French as their medium, especially for administration. They used French and Latin for their administration, process of courts, then especially some sort of literary works also. They used French language. Okay, so that's the next difference of the impact of Middle English period. Okay, and next one is that, and the next difference we can so easily understand the difference. We can easily understand the difference Old English and Medieval English period. And the next important difference is that common people, the position of common people was very pathetic in this time, because the superior class or community, was the major role in the Anglo-Norman time in England. Okay. So superior, that means the common people, because they changed their administrative languages, court languages, and all. They changed all the language into French, Latin language, because this language symbolizes the high status. Okay, high status and position, high position. And it affected the life of common people. Actually, gradually the Anglo-Saxon people raised against their voice through these changes. That means a lot of changes happened in the Norman impact in England, and actually the Anglo-Saxon community was disappointed in these changes, because they did not follow the administrative changes, court changes, and in literary field also they were not aware about this language. Actually, the common people normally used vernacular English, and the Norman administration changed vernacular English into French, Latin, and other. All these languages are symbolized as the high class language, or the language which used by the superior community. So these are the difference between the language, English language and literature, mainly in Old English period and Middle English period. Okay. The next we can discuss about any doubt relating with this the difference between old and middle English period? Any doubt? If you have any doubt, please text a message in our comment box. Clear? Tejaswini, clear? Okay. If you have any doubt, please text. Okay. So now we are discussing about only the basics of English only, and we will move into the next deep level of English literature in the coming classes. And this time we are only based on the basics of English language and literature only, because our class mainly focus on the students who are not from English background. So our class mainly focus on the basics level only, and after the basics we will move into the depth of UPSC syllabus. Okay, not depth, actually it's not, the word is not apt here. It means that we have only limited syllabus, but now we are discussing about the basics of English literature. Okay, the next we can discuss about literature during Anglo-Norman period. Okay, Anglo-Norman. What is Anglo-Norman? We know that Anglo is a normal term. Anglo-Indian, Anglo Saxon, Anglo-Norman. Anglo means relating with England. That is a normal term. Okay, he's an Anglo-Indian. An Anglo-Indian man means a person or his ancestor from England. That is Anglo. The meaning is Anglo. Okay. Then next is, in this time, Anglo-Norman period, mainly we have to remember that in the Old English period, that means Anglo-Saxon. Okay, Old English period is named as Anglo-Saxon. That is Anglo-Saxon. Anglo-Saxon. Actually, in this Anglo-Saxon time, lot of literary works were there. Okay, but all the literary works are unknown, because unknown means only literary works were there, but we don't know who was the author of that particular work. That's a difference. Then next is that time we discussed about Geoffrey Chaucer. Geoffrey Chaucer. We know that Geoffrey Chaucer was the father of English literature. Okay, Geoffrey Chaucer was the father of English literature. He is the father of English literature also. Father of English literature. Okay, and Geoffrey Chaucer wrote different literary works. The important work is Canterbury Tales. Canterbury is a city in England. Okay, city in England. It is a city in England. Okay, and actually we discussed about Geoffrey Chaucer in the Old English period. But we have to remember that the end of the Old English and mainly Geoffrey Chaucer literary works happened in Middle English period. That's an important point. Actually, when we refer about the Old English period, there was a mention about Geoffrey Chaucer, the end of the Middle English period. But actually, Canterbury Tales was the famous work of, it's a collection of story. Okay, it's a collection of stories written by Geoffrey Chaucer, and actually this story, the collection of story, happened in the history reported in the Middle English period, Anglo-Norman period. And at the same time, a lot of different works were there in that time. That means Sir Gawain and Green Knight, then other works of Geoffrey Chaucer. All the works of Geoffrey Chaucer considered as in the Middle English period. Okay, so that's an important point. So these are the important points relating with the Anglo-Norman period. Okay, the next we can discuss impact of Normans Then important point is impact of Normans. What are the impact of Normans in English literature? English literature. Mainly we can classify into 3 layers. I divided into 3 layers. Okay. First one is began a new era. This period is considered as a new era. Okay. New era. And second one is the impact is rich French culture and language. That is the second impact. And third impact is radical change in English literature or English culture. Okay, these are the 3 impact and we can discuss in detail. Okay, so here we can discuss about what are the impact of French people in English literature. We can easily say that when we take a term, for example, this word is originated from the French word. This word is originated from the Latin word. This word is originated from the Greek word. When we take geography, the word geography is originated from this. The work polity, polis, originated from this. It's familiar. Okay, it means that English is a language which influenced the different languages, because the reason is this period. Because during this Norman time in England, for example, we can easily say that, I can say that India. Okay, actually India was a colony, correct? Actually India was a colony till 1947, correct? Okay, because why India was a colony? Because we have Dutch influence in India, Dutch influence, Portuguese influence. Okay, it's easy to study. Like India, the same incident happened in Britain. That's all. Okay. Then Dutch were in India, Portuguese. We have English East India Company. Okay. English East India Company. Then Portuguese, Danes. There was a Denmark. Okay. Okay. Then all these are the different groups arrived in India for trade and agricultural purposes. Like this, I just refer India because you can understand easily what happened in Britain. So, like India, in Britain, different group of people arrived in Britain. Their purpose was trade or agriculture, whatever. Then gradually they lived there, and their language influenced in Britain. That is Briton. Okay, that is Britain. Then because the actual language of English, the English language influenced by the different languages like French, Latin, Greek, and all. Okay, normally we can say that in England, English is a language, is a vernacular language. What is vernacular language? We can say that Hindi. For example, we can take Hindi. Hindi, we know that we can divide Hindi in 2. That means one is pure Hindi. Okay, pure Hindi. For example, we can take Delhi, New Delhi. Okay, in Delhi we can assess the Hindi in different way. Like we have pure Hindi and some sort of colloquial Hindi. Like, okay, it means that dialect is changing. Whenever we go through the remote areas, the same Hindi in a different way of speaking. So like that in England, actually there are 2 types of English used. That means one is pure English and second one is vernacular. So Geoffrey Chaucer, in this time, there was a writer, Geoffrey Chaucer. We already said Geoffrey Chaucer. Okay. Geoffrey Chaucer used vernacular language. What is vernacular? It means that local. Okay, local language. That means that the language which used in the local people. Okay, very simple language. So that's what Geoffrey Chaucer became familiar with the people, and gradually in history he is named as the father of English literature. And but at the same time, come to our point is that what was the role of Normans or Normans? We know that Normans are the people from France. Okay, people from France. Normally they introduced French language in England. Okay, and besides this language, what are the other impacts in England? What are the other impacts? So let's discuss in detail. First one is begin a new era. Actually, what is a begin a new era? That means new language. New language. It means that French, use of Latin, etc. So we can say that it was a beginning of new era. The next point, the impact of Normans. The next point we have to remember is that normally this period is the impact is bad. We can say that the impact of Norman is badly affected in England. Okay, badly affected. We can say that badly affected. Why badly affected? Because the Anglo Saxon people are normally use that time they were using English. When Normans came there, they used the administrative languages and other court languages in French, Latin, and all. So it was a hard thing relating when we consider with the English people that time. Okay, so that is the impact. What are the impact when we discuss about the impact? The first one is the language. Language is the one of the important change happened in that time. Okay. The next is in this Norman time, actually the Anglo-Saxon people, considering the Anglo-Saxon people, we can say that it is unproductiveness. Actually, it was an unproductiveness. What is unproductiveness? Because Norman community or the Norman people normally gave importance for the superior class only. The common people in Britain suffered because the changes changes in the field of administration, changes in the field of religious activities, changes in the field of educational system, whatever, it's badly affected the Anglo community who were in Britain when Normans arrived there. Okay, so that's the next point. The next we can say that low state of education. Low state of education. What is low state of education? It means that during the Norman time in England, they were this community mainly based on the superior class. That means the common people, we know that there were common people in England. Okay, common people in England during the time of Anglo Saxons. And these people normally used vernacular language. And when the Norman people arrived, invaded and they conquered in Britain, they changed all the systems, especially the educational system and all. It badly affected the Anglo-Saxon community. That's an important point. Okay. Then increase of Latin language. Next important point is increase of Latin language. All major sectors, including administration, then educational field, administration, education, court, in all field, Normans used Latin language. It was another impact of Normans in English life. That means England. Okay. The next is The Normans administration only useful for highly educated class. Highly educated class. It means that in educational system also Normans introduced different changes, especially in the language of Latin. So it badly affected the common people, and it was useful for the highly educated community in England. Okay, so that's the next important point. Then next we can discuss about the sorry. Okay. Next we can discuss about what was the response of Anglo-Saxon. What was the response of Anglo-Saxon when the Norman people arrived there? The response of Anglo-Saxon community. Okay. Then it means that mainly Normans used Norman administration, mainly focused on the rich culture. Okay, rich culture. And it was, what are the awakening? We are discussing about awakening of Anglo-Saxon community. That means how the people respond the arrival of Normans in England. Mainly, Norman people are following, we can say that the Norman people are following the rich culture system, and it's not applicable for the common people in England. So it was the first reason behind the position of Anglo-Saxon community in England. That is point number one. Next they used a literature, that means Norman literature, a new type of literature they introduced, and it was also against the awareness of Anglo-Saxon community. That means the Anglo-Saxon community normally follow the common English, and they used that French language, Latin language in the literary works also. That was also one of the reason behind the awakening of Anglo-Saxon community in that time. Okay, then next is a lot of radical changes happened due to this system. And in England that time, poor people only follow English language, vernacular English language, and thus people gradually was against the Norman administrative system. That is the next important impact. And next one is Norman people normally give importance to the prestige and status. Okay, they ignored the common people. Okay, then gradually the Anglo-Saxon community hostility changed into a national unity, and all these administrative system created a hostility towards that means enmity. Hostility means enmity towards Normans, And this hostility changed into a national awakening against Norman people, against Norman administration. Okay. So these are the important points relating with the impact of Normans in England. Okay. So here let's discuss about the timeline of British English or English literature. Here in this slide we can discuss about the timeline. We already said the UPSC exam, UPSC mains exam, we have 1600 onwards the syllabus. Onwards, 1600 onwards, UPSC mentioned about the syllabus. And actually we have to focus on the concluding period of Middle English literature. But at the same time we have to focus on Old English, some sort of that means literary aspects, history and all. So it's a basic thing. But in UPSC syllabus, only from Middle English literature or the end of Middle English literature is important. So here in this slide we can discuss about the overall period and its features in short. So we can easily recollect the important divisions of literature and its points. Okay, so let's discuss. So here first one is Anglo-Saxon. We already studied Anglo-Saxon. And here what is the Anglo-Saxon's peculiarity of Anglo-Saxon period? We can say that heroism was an important peculiarity, and moral instructions. Heroism and moral instructions. That means a lot of religious system there. And we already said that the Anglo-Saxon time, different types of adventure. That means mainly the Anglo-Saxon literature mainly focused on adventure. So that's an important point. And mainly the literary works on oral traditions and mainly poetry. Actually we know that poetry was the first form of literary work started in English literature. Poetry was the first form of literary works. Okay, first form of literary works started in the history of English literature. Then next one is okay. Then next period is the same period Anglo-Saxon. We have the important work Beowulf, then and other external authors. Then the important peculiarity of Anglo-Saxon period is historical context. Historical context. What are the historical contexts? The different clans there. Then various different types of because we know that Anglo-Saxon means Angles, Saxon and Jutes. Actually they were fishermen, warriors. Okay, so all these are the peculiarity of that time. And this period mainly focused on oral traditions, and that time also a Roman alphabet system was introduced in the concluding time. It's a end period of Old English, that means old and Anglo-Saxon time. There was also Roman alphabet introduced. Okay, and next we discussed about medieval time. What was the peculiarity of medieval time? So let's discuss the medieval time. Medieval time means we know that Anglo-Norman time. Medieval time means Anglo-Norman time, and we discussed about Anglo-Norman time and the important difference from Old English literature. And what are the peculiarity of Anglo-Norman time or medieval time? This time is mainly based on honor, religious devotion and chivalry. It means that some sort of a superiority or superior power we can see in this time, medieval time, Middle English time. It means that a lot of lords system. That means mainly in this time we have three layers there. That means noblemen, clergy, and common people. Three layer system in medieval time that we will discuss in the next class also. The next one is genres, the genre of the or the type of literary works. That is oral tradition also here. Then frame stories and plays. That means drama. Okay, also introduced in this time. And next is the important authors in medieval time is Chaucer, then Arthurian legends. Okay. Then what are the historical context? Is crusades begin and country forms. And literature effects. What are the literature's effect in this time? What was the literature effects? We already said that all the literary works mainly concentrate on Latin and French language. Okay. So here it means church uses literature to instruct population. Then illiterate can hear and see stories. So these are the two different areas we already discussed in the class. And this is Anglo-Saxon, and we covered that one. And middle, that means the basic thing only we discussed in this class. And in the next class onwards, we will focus on the literary works, and based on the literary works, we will discuss the period in detail. Okay, because we need not to bother about the period in detail, because we are studying literature only. We don't need to dig the history. Okay. And for the UPSC exam, it's not like a JRF and NET exam. And whenever we prepare for the literature in UPSC, for the purpose of UPSC, we have to understand the basics of the ages only. And whenever we comparing with the JRF and NET exam, I'm saying that in order to you have to avoid the mistake. That means when we prepare for this UPSC exam, we have to study in the horizontal way, not in a vertical way. Okay, that means that we have to understand the basics of the period only. Don't dig into the history, because it was a wrong way of preparation. That's what I'm saying here, that we need not to dig into the history of this Anglo-Saxon and middle time, because our syllabus, UPSC syllabus, starts from only 1600. Because from the 1600 only we have to concentrate more. That's I want to say. But we just go through the old period, Anglo-Saxon period and all. Okay. So these are the important areas, and all other ages we will discuss in the upcoming classes. And in short, we can revise once again relating with the Anglo-Saxon period and the Norman period. That in the last classes we discussed about the English literature in the two different areas, mainly old period or Anglo-Saxon period, and the after Anglo-Saxon, there was a period in England that is called as Anglo-Norman period. Okay. Then, what are the difference between Anglo-Saxon period and Anglo-Norman period? We explained that Anglo-Saxons were a community, a tribal community who entered in England for their agricultural purposes. Gradually, they ruled there. They were the administrators in England. And that time it was Briton, Briton. Then gradually the name changed, that is Britain. Okay. And then that time also the different types of literature appeared in Britain area. And that time they used the different types of literature and religious system, way of living and all. And all these reflected in their literary works, especially Beowulf, like the literary works, we can say that they normally likes adventures, and they considered as the brave people. Okay. And not only the adventure stories, but also there are different types of literary works there, especially the works like elegy there, and some sort of religious stories are there, Christianity there. So all these reflected in their literary works. And then we discussed about Anglo-Norman period. Anglo-Norman period means it was a period in England, that means a group of people, people come from France that were called as Norman, and in that time it is named as Anglo-Norman time. They introduced French language and Latin language, and their influence reflected in the English literature and different literary works introduced during that time. And that works mainly based on Latin and French language. And gradually the Norman arrival made some sort of a grudge or some enmity, created an enmity in the mind of Anglo-Saxon people, and gradually it changed into a national awakening. That means an awareness, and they tried to fight against Norman people. It also influenced in the literature, English literature. So these are the basic things we discussed in this class. And in the next class onwards, we will focus on the more literary works and periods as well. Okay, so let's continue our session in the next day. Thank you.